Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to Evolving Consciousness. In today's video, we are going to talk about the three modes of nature. The three modes which essentially constitute both our outer reality as well as our inner reality. Now, today's video's content is inspired from the 14th chapter of Srimad Bhagwad Gita. Srimad Bhagwad Gita needs no introduction. Now, why is it so important and essential for you and me to understand this three modes of nature? Because back in 5000 years back, Lord Krishna talks about three essential building blocks, three essential categories which can be used to classify anything which can be circumscribed or which consists of reality. What do I mean by that? Now, there is nothing in reality, both in the inner world and in the outer world, which cannot be boiled down to three distinct categories. Into these three distinct categories, or if they are not a part of these three distinct categories, they are certainly a permutation and combination or an amalgamation of these three different qualities in different hues and proportions. Now, let's go a little deep into understanding what Lord Krishna is talking about. Whether you want to classify objects, whether you want to classify personality types, everything can be brought about in these three distinct categories. Now, to put it very simply, to lay out the very foundation of what this is talking about, the three modes of material nature are essentially, number one, sattva, which can be called mode of goodness. Now, what does mode of goodness mean? Now, mode of goodness essentially means a quality which is naturally circumequated to happiness, to bliss, to peace. Whenever you are engaged in an activity which brings solace to your consciousness, which brings a lot of ease within you. One such example could be an activity like meditation, an activity like yogic pranayama, an activity like engaging in worship. Now, there are a lot of different things which one can do to enhance this mode of goodness. People who are naturally exuberant, people who are naturally jubilant, these are the people who have a predominance of sattva gun, or you would have heard of this word, the Sanskrit word called sattvic. Now, how do you know whether a person is in the mode of goodness or not? Essentially, it is said that human beings are all confined to 9 gates. We all are confined in 9 gates, whether we are aware of it or not. Now, you might be wondering, what are these 9 gates all about? These 9 gates are essentially the doorways through which we interact with the outside world. Essentially, they are our senses. There are 2 eyes, our 2 ears, our 2 nostrils, our mouth, skin, and the 2 excretory pathways. They sum up to be 9, right? And this was talked about in the Gita. It was talked about in a lot of detail that any kind of interaction we have with the outside world, it is through these 9 gates. And when a person is in a mode of goodness, he will always associate with certain things, with inputs which resonate with that quality. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, you would have heard of people who are naturally inclined to spirituality. It is not that something happened in their life and after that they took the shelter of spirituality, but they naturally have a settled sense of inquisitiveness towards the domains of spirituality, towards the mode of goodness, towards divinity, towards divine qualities. Now, these are the people who are naturally high in sattvic gun. Naturally, these people have a high amount of sattvic gun. Now, one thing to note and one thing to be extremely careful about is, when we first are exposed to this knowledge of sattvic, rajasic, tamasic, it is very tempting to sort of aim towards having an absolutely sattvic personality, one thing you need to realize that if you are completely sattvic, 100% sattvic, you won't be able to sleep. You won't be able to function because you are so absolutely consumed in bliss and peace and a state of nirvana. Now, if you are in this material world and you are living an average modern day life, then it is important to have sattva gun in predominance, but rajas and tamas are also not equally important, but proportionately they do serve the purpose. A certain level of tamas is needed if you want to sleep. This sort of brings me to this example. There is a reason why yogis and monks, they don't sleep a lot, because they have a lot of sattva gun imbibed in their consciousness, because of which they can survive, not only survive but thrive extremely proactively with a limited amount of sleep. The number of hours these people sleep are limited, but their efficiency is probably more than the people who sleep a normal 6 to 8 hours. The reason is these people are high in sattva gun, are the mode of goodness. Now, there are a lot of ways in which any person can enhance the mode of goodness. But to give you a basic introduction what this meant, Sattvagun essentially is whenever you find yourself at peace, when you are in the midst of nature, you automatically are showered with a bliss of tranquility, with a sense of bliss within you. That is essentially your Sattvagun coming into full prowess. Now, the number one reason why we are in so much of anxiety and we are in so much of a turmoil is because of rajas, which is basically the mode of passion. Now, mode of passion can be associated with or can be characterized with restlessness. If you are someone who constantly scrolls on social media, if you are someone who is absolutely agitated most of the times, if you are someone who constantly has this habit of shaking his leg or tipping on the pen, you probably have a high amount of rajas. And there are people who are absolutely obsessed or absolutely conquered by this constant urge to hoard things, to hoard more and more material things. This is a high amount of rajas in play, or the mode of passion in play. Any activity which makes you restless. Now, some of you might think that certain amount of restlessness is necessary to thrive. That is completely true, but one caveat here is that most of the time, restlessness is not necessary to thrive, but a sense of enthusiasm is what is needed to thrive. Anxiety is not necessary, anxiety is not an indispensable requirement for us to flourish, but a sense of enthusiasm which also comes under the umbrella of the mode of goodness. Enthusiasm is also sattvic, but we tend to make it rajasic because we have an enthusiasm not from the outside, but we need to cultivate it from the inside if we want to keep it in the umbrella of goodness. But if it's coming from outside things, your enthusiasm is coming essentially from the outside, then the enthusiasm has a rajasic quality. And rajasic quality can also be characterized by a need to constantly be fidgety. If the things are not happening the way you wanted, you are absolutely struck with a lot of anxiety and restlessness. And funnily enough, if rajas is not handled, if rajas is not regulated, over a period of time, it mutates into tamas, which is the third mode of nature. Now, tamas is probably the worst place any human being can be. It's characterized by the mode of ignorance, by the habit of lethargy, by the habit of not wanting to do anything in life and just being idle, and just consuming yourself in absolutely self-defeating thoughts which don't serve you in any way. but they give you a certain sense of tamasic satisfaction, a satisfaction which is coming from the mode of ignorance. Now, people who are a lot of tamasic by nature, they tend to indulge in intoxication and also the self-destructive habits. People who end up becoming addicts of any kind of substance or any kind of virtual things. There are a lot of virtual things out there which can make us habitual addicts. These are all people who are consumed by tamasic qualities. And the funny part is that essentially these three levels of consciousness, each one of us has within it to different degrees, and that defines a personality of a person. To what degree a person is sattvic, to what degree a person is rajasic, to what degree a person is tamasic, essentially showcases his personality, his demeanor. And personality and characteristics of a person are an indispensable requirement for any kind of success. They are absolutely instrumental not only for the success in the material world but also for his overall well-being. A person who is excessively rajasic tends to become tamasic if things don't happen the way he wanted. A person who is rajasic, as I mentioned previously, is characterized by restlessness. He wants to take a lot of action, but that action is not coming from a place of ease, but that action is coming from a place of anxiety, the place of lack, a place of sort of consumed by an insatiable lust, a lust which cannot be satiated through any means. Now, this is the reason a lot of people who are very driven in life, they succumb to depression. Reason is that rajas really served them in helping them accomplish goals. But what essentially happened was they didn't keep that rajasic quality or that mode of passion in check. And because of that, that mode of passion transmuted into mode of ignorance, where they absolutely ignored what is essentially good for them, and they were so consumed in achieving things, in hoarding things, that they lost their state of mind, the state of balance. And funnily enough, these three modes of nature are not only confined or isolated to define personality types, but anything in the outside world, any food material can also be categorized as sattvic, rajasic and tamasic. Food which are not alive, food which are essentially dead, they come under the tamasic quality, tamasic categorization. And the rajasic food items are essentially all the spices which tend to make us very active, but that activity can also cause restlessness. And sattvic food are those foods which are high energy foods, which give us energy but with a sense of ease, with a sense of balance. And hence it is very important to firstly identify to in which proportion of nature is more within us. If you are someone who is more sattvic, then probably you are someone who is naturally at ease, who is naturally peaceful. And you can also be someone who is very productive, because sattva gun or the state which is characterized by sattvic mode of goodness is probably the most powerful gun anyone can be in, because it has countless benefits. Not only can we be more productive in the material world, but it also is very essential for our own mental well-being. But if you are someone who is excessively rajasic, you might have a lot of material achievements to your record, but sooner or later you probably are going to burn out. Hence it's very important to not eradicate either of these qualities, but to match or to get or to tune or to balance the right proportion of these three qualities, because these three qualities are essential for our existence, but we need to balance the right proportions. The ideal thing would be to have more of sattva gun and to only have rajas and tamas when it's required. But right now, the modern day, it is completely flipped. We have more of rajasic and tamasic qualities in human beings, and this is the reason for unrest and all the calamities, all the maladies which humans are plagued with. The number one reason for all the mental illnesses and all the mental issues which each one of us has is an absolute imbalance of these three modes of nature. Now, these three modes of nature are so subtle and in so much of depth. In the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna has talked about it, that entire humanity, our entire nature, right, the very nature can be defined through these three qualities. And there is no one who is above these three qualities. If there is someone who has reached a state in his life where he has gone above these three qualities, essentially that is a state of self-realization. And we are not talking about that in this video. The primary reason of me making this video was so that I could spread awareness as to what these three modes are and what is the number one thing which we all need to try towards or strive towards if you want to live a balanced, serene and a productive life. Now you can also be aware of the kind of tendencies you have. If you are someone who is in Sattva, most of the times suffering becomes difficult to you. No matter what the situations in the outside, it's difficult for you to feel agitated. It's difficult for you to feel any kind of lamentation or remorse. But on the contrary, if you are someone who is consumed with a lot of negativity, Rajas and Tamas are going to be the defining hues of your personality. Hence, I hope my today's video was sort of an eye-opener and probably would also inspire you to go and look at the 14th chapter of Srimad Bhagwad Gita, because every time I read the Srimad Bhagwad Gita, I am absolutely mesmerized by the great detailing of this epic text. Because let's understand the premise, the times and days when this was narrated by Lord Krishna, and the fact that it is so relevant even to today's times, and even probably 1,000 years from now, it's still going to be very relevant. This fact mesmerizes me. Because normally any book loses its relevance if it is written at a certain period of time and 100 years later that book has completely lost relevance. Because the setting, the societal structures completely change with centuries and eons of evolution. But this is one book which is so relevant even in the different eons of evolution. No matter how many years of evolution one has gone by, this book still remains absolutely valid and absolutely enlightening. Every text of Bhagavad Gita speaks volumes. And if you have the right temperament, if you approach it with inquisitiveness, then you can also relate it with your day-to-day activities, and the way you view reality is going to take a 360-degree paradigm shift. Thank you so much for your time on my video, and if you really enjoyed the video, do give me your candid feedback as to what are the aspects which you enjoyed and what are the aspects which have a scope of improvement. Thank you so much, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel wherein we talk about a host of topics mostly inclined towards personal development and spirituality. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll meet you in the next video.